All children, except one, grow up. And I've always felt like that one. Truly, fully, unapologetically, horrifyingly, heart-shatteringly, isolatingly, completely, all-consumingly, forever and always. Flying from country to country, profession to profession, Wendy to Wendy. Never landing. Forever floating. Because landing means facing the ground. And the ground, once it has you, once it anchors you, means growing up. And you can't ungrow up. There are certain things you simply can't come back from. You can't get younger. You can never be more innocent. We are all dying. But growing up to me always felt like getting to the end faster. But now, as I see everyone getting on with their lives, I see now that time is still passing me by, whether I grab onto reality or continue to float through fantasy. Peter Pan syndrome is the fear of responsibility disguised as the pursuit of freedom. For me, there was this refusal to grow up because growing up represented a death sentence. When we are young, freedom means running away from everyone and everything. That is to be free. But when we're older and hopefully wiser, freedom might mean choosing what to stay for, who to stay for. When I was younger, I really wasn't aware of all that. And I've been running for a long time. But now I feel I'm on the edge of change. It might have been Eric Fromm that said, escape from freedom. Now, when humans are finally free to shape their own lives, many of us panic. We run to fantasy instead of facing what we see as a blank page of reality. And that about sums up everything you need to know or could have ever known or possibly will ever know about me. When I was younger than I am now, I almost said when I was a child, but the entire purpose of this episode is to confess that my insecurity still leads me to think of myself as a child. So, when I was younger, a younger child than I am the child now, I wanted to be something like a Peter Pan. And even now, I'm still clinging to the essence of that character, of that lost boy. Or maybe he's clinging to me, following me everywhere I go. Long ago, I went out into the woods and built my own bow and arrow. A real one, or as real as I could make it, from a shoelace, a stick, and a sharpened piece of wood. When I couldn't find anything worth shooting at, one might say I was aimless, I pointed the arrow straight up into the sky and fired it at the sun. Of course, I lost it in the sun, but kept staring straight up regardless. The arrow went straight up and came straight back down, plunging itself into my left eye. And Stefan Pan was in an eye patch for about 2 weeks. This is the kind of story that really epitomizes my life. I am Peter Pan. I am Icarus. I fly too close to the sun and shoot things at it. And on some level, I just don't accept that gravity should apply to me. And this has been a pattern, a destructive pattern at times. It has also been a thrilling pattern. It has made people not quite understand my choices through my behavior. And maybe to be misunderstood was more appealing to me than to be seen through. At least if there's mystery to me, people might perceive something nice about me. But if I'm completely transparent with who I am, then by definition people will see through me, all of me. And then they'll be able to truly judge me based off of fact instead of speculation. And that, of course, is terrifying. To be not enough, to be fully seen. Yes, I have been forever chasing the next place, the next story, my next escape. Neverland to me is always on the other side of whatever it is that I can't see. And every time I'm running from the weight of reality, I'm flying to Neverland. But Neverland doesn't exist. It can't exist. Because whenever I get to where I'm going, I'm confronted with reality there waiting for me. I have so often packed a suitcase instead of unpacking what should have been said. Now, Peter Pan is obviously so much more than just a children's story. And children's stories often reveal so much about human nature. And there's genius in the simplicity that can resonate across generations and cultures. Peter Pan might be the best allegory ever written about the fear of maturity. In The Psychology of the Peter Pan Syndrome by Dr. Humbelina Robles, there's a line that says, "The development of the Peter Pan syndrome often arises from inconsistent parenting, too much protection, too little accountability. You grow up loved but perhaps not prepared, shaped but unshaped." Now, this wasn't my case. For me, it was probably a little bit too much hands-on from my mom and a little bit too much hands-off from my father. My parents, of course, loved me deeply, but it was a complicated relationship. And at the time, altogether, we didn't have a very strong family unit. Everyone was living in their own world. Each of us had different value systems, different definitions of success, different realities. We weren't living on the same planet, just orbiting each other's planets. It could be chaotic at times. Now, my brother, he escaped into literature, academia, his intellect. I escaped into the world. I climbed trees. I built forts. At one time, I had 5 secret forts around the city. One of them even had its own toilet that I had taken from a dumpster. For me, reading about adventure wasn't enough. I needed to be living in it. Another of my forts was high up in a tree, completely covered by leaves. And I built a zipline about 30 feet high from one tree across the yard to the other. Now, one day my neighbor saw me using the zipline and asked if he could try it. Well, on his first attempt, the towel that we were using as a grip snapped and he fell 30 feet directly onto his back, the poor soul. Now, what would a rational person do? Disassemble the zipline and maybe never do something so foolish and dangerous again. What did I do? I replaced the towel with a green gardening hose and continued my adventure. Because that's what Peter Pan would have done. Peter Pan doesn't end, doesn't die when you finish the book. He is eternal. He continues on, eternally young, as a matter of fact. And that's the whole idea. And that's the thing. This archetype shows up everywhere. It's not just kids like me climbing trees. It's grown men with endless options, still avoiding gravity. Pop culture is full of Peter Pans. Celebrities with unlimited access, fame, finances, yet still chasing youth like it's the only currency that matters. Leonardo DiCaprio, for example, gets mocked for dating younger women. And to be fair, it's a valid mockery. Because there's some sort of decision, both conscious and unconscious, being made there. This refusal to let time touch you. A refusal to see yourself aging in someone else's eyes. So you date someone young and then trade them in for a newer model. And I can empathize with that feeling. Because for my life, I've done something similar, thinking that growing up was optional, which is technically true, but of course not advisable. You can avoid growing up, but the cost is so great. Because if you never mature, you die unfinished. You have never completed your life. The whole purpose of life is forward motion. Yes, you can take a step back from time to time, but you should always be taking 2 steps forward. Otherwise, it's like that old definition of crazy. Doing the same thing over and over and over and somehow expecting different results. And here I am globetrotting around the world, always starting anew, but still arriving as Stefan. To live life fully means growing up, even when it's uncomfortable, even if it's terrifying. A famous quote is, "We all have 2 lives, and the moment you realize that you only have one is when you begin living the second." And I think that's where I am now. I do feel like I'm starting a second life, or maybe even a third or fourth. I'm certainly on some sort of precipice. Adult life, mortality, age, time, purpose, passion. What is it all for? And then there's Captain Hook, the villain that we create for ourselves. Because Hook isn't evil to me. He's symbolic. Yes, he's meant to represent time, but I think there's so much more to him than that. Captain Hook is Peter Pan's future self if he continues down the same path. Hook and Peter are the same. Hook is what Peter becomes if he continues to refuse facing reality. He is time, yes, but he is also mortality and consequence. He is the inevitable trajectory that Peter Pan cannot escape from in Neverland. This is your fate, Peter, if you don't man up, if you don't take responsibility. He's the result of drift. He's the price you pay for never landing. We all invent our own hooks and our own Neverlands. In his deepest, darkest thoughts, I imagine Peter Pan knows that Captain Hook is his future in disguise. He represents the older self that Peter doesn't want to meet, but will turn into. Now, our hooks can show up as many of the things that slowly destroy us. Addiction, validation, chaos. It's one of the scariest things to envision your future self and not like what you see, even though you know you're heading towards it. Which is why it might be worth imagining who you want to be as an older man or woman, and then striving to become that every single day. If you have your looks now but nothing else, one day you will lose those looks, and then you will be left with nothing. Now for me, I've always found it easier to fight a monster than to truly face myself in the mirror. Just like war can be simpler than stillness. War can be more stabilizing than the quiet that follows. But peace cannot be found through avoidance. It can only be found through integration. Integration through maturity, responsibility, growth. The boy who refuses to grow up will create his own demons to stay young. That might be a quote from someone, but I can't remember right now. But that is Hook. And that is the heart of Peter Pan. Here's the paradox. Peter Pan is terrified of adulthood, and at the same time, addicted to the drama of avoiding it. Avoidance becomes entertainment, and entertainment becomes his identity. The longer you stay afloat, the higher you need to ascend to continue to feel weightless. The closer you are to the sun that will burn your wings, and the farther you are from the ground upon which you need to land. What happens when we realize we've overstayed our welcome in Neverland? What happens when we fly so high and the air becomes so thin that we find ourselves completely alone, unable to breathe the air? What happens when the people we loved, the people we forsook, are no longer waiting for us by an open window? What happens when your Wendy finally gives up and moves on, just so you can realize that you were the problem? You were the one holding her back. What happens when you realize that all your adventure is based on avoidance? It takes some time to realize, but Captain Hook is not your enemy. He is you. You are your worst enemy. He's a villain you created to avoid realer villains. Not monsters, but growth itself. The scariest thing to you. He's the distraction you built to keep yourself from facing the truth, because you're avoiding making peace with time itself. You have to accept that you will die, but you still get to choose how you live. You have to stop running from your shadow. You have to learn to walk with it. Your shadow will always be with you. This is how boys become men. We must all leave Neverland, but you can't leave by flying, because if you're still flying, you're still in Neverland. I still haven't figured out how to grow up without losing that spark of youthfulness, but we can't remain aimless forever, because floating by definition is aimlessness. You can, of course, visit Neverland from time to time, to dream, play, imagine, but you can't build your life midair, because sooner or later, that arrow of invincibility, imagination, that arrow of endless possibility that you shot up into the sky will come back down. And you can only evade it for so long, but eventually it will hit its mark. And you'll wish that you had done differently. All right, builders, see you every Sunday. And remember, growth equals understanding why you can't settle in Neverland with a shadow that will one day inevitably lead you to a Captain Hook of your choosing. Brick by brick, we'll get there. Valeu!